Many of us are familiar with the television program called House. House is a doctor who has extraordinary powers of diagnosis and prescription, and he works largely from intuition. We in the financial profession, fortunately, don't always work from intuition because we have a very good statistical base in the form of financial statements produced by companies at the end of each year. And once we have that information, we can use it to carry out a lot of statistical tests, which takes the intuition out of the entire process. So during the work that I've been doing in the last few years, which is looking at risk and trying to analyze risk, particularly for financial institutions in terms of lending money, I thought surely these calculations and these tests must be able to be clarified and codified into some kind of common piece of software, which would take the drudgery out of all these calculations. And looking around on the internet and searching nationally and internationally for some sort of diagnostic tool, it turned out there wasn't really any. There were some that were quite simple. And so I decided that it was time to build my own diagnostic tool. This was aided by a number of other developments. First of all, an understanding by talking to, in the last 3 years, to 1,200 bankers and getting their views on what kind of tests work and what kind of tests don't work. And then secondly, the improvements in technology, the improvements to start with in Excel, the statistical packages and the graphic packages, conditional formattings, and then later on the cloud computing, that it would be possible to put a piece of software together which would do a lot of the diagnostic work for us and pretty much ensure accuracy and present the results in a way that you could immediately identify where the problem areas were. And so we developed a prototype of this particular software, and it's now ready, and it's ready to run, and we've tested the results, and it's showing up a number of things. In fact, in addition to what we expected to find, we find sometimes things that we don't expect to find. So because the software is completely objective, it immediately identifies where there are problems. And you know, even very large companies sometimes exhibit those symptoms. So it's one thing now, we subject the information to 66 different tests, and once we've applied those tests, we show them up in stunning graphics and compare them against benchmarks. We then try to present the information in some fairly unique ways. So to take the medical analogy further, the first set of reports we produce is called the first impressions, which simply compares the previous year against the current year, and it's the first indication of what the patient's condition looks like. Thereafter, the second report is what we call the vital signs. So there are a number, probably 7 or 8 critical performance measures that we use to assess the health of any business. And if you are below the averages, you may still survive, but there are certain minimum cutoff thresholds for those particular tests. And so we test the organization first to see whether those vital signs are still there. Thereafter, we moved to a series of prescriptive tests, which would be the equivalent of the heart test and the thermometer and so on in a doctor. And then we have a report which we call the blood test, which takes all the 66 ratios and ranks them from the best year to the worst year. So with an aging patient or an aging company, we can actually see whether the patient is getting better or getting worse in what they're doing. We also throw out a final report for the patient under a series of under a series of headings, which would be things like your performance over the last 5 years in terms of sport, your performance in terms of how your weight is going, your performance in terms of whether your arteries are hardening up, and so on. So those are the medical analogies that we can use, and the reports which come out. Now, if I may say, in conclusion, it's not a silver bullet. This software will not identify that hidden, undervalued share that no one else has seen. It won't come up with magical new ratios that no one's ever heard of. But the ability to analyze financial statements is absolutely essential skill for anyone who works with, in the financial services area, in financial journalism, people who are investigating fraud, internal auditors, and so on. It's an essential skill that you have to be able to interpret those numbers and hold them up to the light in the same way that a surgeon holds up an X-ray to the light and sees so much there that the civilian doesn't see. This software does do that. It delivers, and at the price that it delivers, really, it's a no-brainer.